What happens when two dudes, one a retired Navy SEAL commander in Colorado Springs, and the other a hippie meditation teacher in New York City, get together to discuss living mindfully? That's a great question, because we don't know what will happen either. Raw, uncut, and unapologetic. Welcome to Men Talking Mindfulness with co-hosts John McCaskill and Will Schneider. Each week, we take an authentic dive into how mindfulness continually impacts our lives, deepens our relationships, and allows us to be emotionally alive. Now, on to the show. Hey, hello, and welcome to another episode of Men Talking Mindfulness. I'm Will Schneider, and I'm joined by a man that I admire very much, my brother from another mother, John McCaskill, and your co-host of the show, by the way. Hi, John. How are you today?
I'm well, brother. Good to see you.
Yeah. So today we are joined by Meghan and Joe Barnard, the founders of Embark at the Forge, also known as the Forge School for Boys. The Forge School is a short-term residential treatment facility to service and develop healthy coping skills for teen boys. We brought in Joe and Meghan to help anyone who is listening to become more aware of the struggle that teen boys face today, so we can be more effective parents, leaders, teachers, coaches, and help boys become more loving and responsible adults. So before we get into the show, I'll turn it over to John for any announcements.
Yeah, brother.
John, how you doing today?
Yeah, well, I'm doing well, man. I'm doing really well. Looking forward to the weekend, I'll be honest, but I'm doing well, and very excited to have Meghan and Joe Barnard here, and we'll bring them up here in a second. But first, we just returned from Costa Rica, an amazing experience, and we've got some videos on that already on YouTube. And the podcast will be dropping on Tuesday, December 7th, the anniversary of the attack on Pearl Harbor. But if you haven't watched or listened to those, check them out. And if you have any questions about the retreat or about psychedelics, please shoot us messages, shoot us those questions via social media. That's John at mentalkingmindfulness.com for our email, or Will at mentalkingmindfulness.com. And I spell my name Jon. And then since we've returned, we've had a ton going on and got a lot going on between now and season 4. Season 4 is going to kick off January 14th, 2022. And we're lining up some great topics and amazing guests for that. So make sure you follow us on YouTube, because we're going to be streaming exclusively on YouTube starting next season. And subscribe to our podcast so that you don't miss anything. Between now and then, we're going to be releasing this episode, our second episode on the reflections of our Costa Rica trip, our holiday special that we just recorded on how to enjoy the holidays with less stress, and an episode on how to develop grit through mindfulness. And then between the seasons, we'll be releasing 6 episodes that will be nothing but some simple meditations for you all to use whenever you want. Lastly, we've started writing our first book together. It's a work in progress, but it's going to be done and ready for purchase early next year. So make sure you stay tuned to learn more about that. And lastly, I said lastly already, but now this is truly lastly, I'm wearing my Navy shirt in honor of the Army-Navy football game next weekend, not this coming weekend, but next weekend on December 11th. And this show won't be published until after that. But for those watching before then, I got to say, go Navy, beat Army. So let's bring Joe and Meghan Barnard up on the show. There they are. Good to see you guys. How are you?
Good.
Doing fantastic.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Life's good.
Awesome.
Thanks so much for joining us today, guys. We'll go through your bios. Yeah, I'll read Joe, and you want to read Meghan, John? Is that all right?
Sounds good, man. Sounds good. And then I'll get into the grounding practice to kick us off.
Yes, you took the words out of my mouth. So, hey, Joe Barnard, thank you so much for joining us today. He has served in the U.S. Air Force for 33 years as an elite rescue man. His first 13 years as an enlisted parachuteman. And then in 2001, pararescueman. Okay, and then in 2001, he was selected for commission as one of his first inaugural combat rescue officers. Joe has a BS from SIU. What is SIU? I'm not.
Southern Illinois University, and the BS is perfect for that. Absolutely.
I have a BS too, right? As well. So he has a BS in workforce development and an MS, a Master's of Science from the IRAU in human factors and safety. Joe retired in 2016 as a lieutenant colonel. His career highlights are commanded three times. I was an headquarters branch director as well as a clandestine program manager. And he deployed 13 times. Wow, Joe, 13 times. Joe is an avid skydiver and surfer and lover of all things tech. Same here. STEM was a significant part of his military career as he advanced communication devices, vehicles, and weapon systems, medical devices, procedures, confined space recovery systems, and parachute systems. Wow, that's pretty incredible, Joe. Following his military retirement, him and his wife of 30 years, Meghan, who is a yoga instructor, traveled Southeast Asia for 5 months, Thailand, Singapore, and Bali. That sounds so fun. And Joe believes that team is so much better than self, and he looks forward to being a key part of and helping yours become better. Thanks for joining this show.
And then I'll wrap up. Meghan Barnard. Meghan is currently the director of enrollment and marketing for the Forge School. She founded the Forge alongside her husband, Joe. We've obviously got them both here, who serves as the executive director. She has the unique opportunity to connect with and support families as they navigate the emotional road of mental health and treatment. Meghan has always been passionate about helping others live their best and healthiest life and has been a yoga instructor for 13 years. As an experienced and well-traveled retreat leader and yoga educator, she has had the opportunity to affect many lives positively. Skilled and trained in a variety of yoga teaching modalities, including trauma-informed yoga, mindfulness, and yoga nidra. She is an age optimist and a clean food enthusiast, a collaborator and connector, a cheerleader of women, a mother of sons, and a wife to a high-functioning thrill seeker. Welcome, guys.
Thanks for having us.
All right, so
she's it all right here. So that's all.
there you go. There you go. I think we can always celebrate our better halves, Joe. So hey, so before we get more into the show, we always kick off the show with a grounding practice. So that said, I'm gonna, in reverence of the practice, Will, as you always say, I'm going to take off my hat and show off my terrible hair again.
I just like seeing your terrible hair, John. That's why I asked you to do it. Yeah.
It's really a marketing tactic. If I just tell everybody that I've got terrible hair on the show, everybody wants to see a Navy SEAL with terrible hair. Anyway, so I'm going to kick off my shoes, plant my feet on the ground, and if that's comfortable for you, go ahead and do so. Otherwise, whatever fits, whatever feels right for you, let's get into this practice. I'm closing my eyes because that feels comfortable for me. If that's what feels good for you, I invite you to do the same. Otherwise, just lower your eyelids and soften your gaze, and let's bring our attention to our breath. Nothing forced just yet, just noticing it. Noticing where it is entering your body and where it is leaving your body. Noticing how when you breathe in, your lungs expand, push your belly and your chest out. And when you breathe out, the reverse happens. Lungs, belly, chest contract. And for now, as you continue thinking about your breath and noticing your breath, if you start to notice some thoughts coming into this practice, just bring your focus back to the breath. And don't feel a need to judge yourself. Thinking thoughts and your mind wandering is perfectly natural. Continue focusing on the breath. Bring yourself into the here and the now. And now let's wrap this up with 2 cleansing breaths together. Begin by breathing out all your air, bringing your navel to your spine. Breathe in deep in through your nose if you're able. Hold at the top and relax, letting it go nice and slow. Slow, slow. Hold at the bottom. And last breath in, deep in through your nose. Inflate that belly, inflate that chest all the way to the top. Hold at the top, noticing that sense of fullness. And relax, letting it go nice and slow. Slow and relaxed. Relaxed and slow. All right, now start to bring some movement back into your body, maybe rotating your head around a little bit. And if your eyes were closed, start to blink them open. And here we are, finally getting into the show. The whole process takes forever to get to the interview. Sorry, guys, but here we are.
You can't put a price on that breathing exercise.
Yeah, it's something that our audience has reached out and let us know that they enjoy, and honestly, it gets me and Will primed and in a better space to ask better questions, so the interview runs better.
Yeah.
So, Will, you want to kick this off?
Yeah. Well, thanks again for being here, all of us being here today. And I'd like to, tell us a little bit more about your background. I mean, I think it's a great place to start to hear from you.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing about us is that we, not only did we have a long military career together, but we stayed together, And so, and raising 2 boys and having that sort of little family moving around I think we moved around 21 times in the Air Force. And I think
Wow.
we're in our forever home now in Chattanooga, but that was 24 moves to get us here. So I think that's sort of the big thing. And then we have a passion for helping young people stay together. And we have a passion for a sense of service. I think John's job was way harder than mine. Being a rescue guy, I think, is easy. You get to go out and help and all the time. But what he was doing out there with his guys is different. So, he's shaking his head no. I have conversations with all sorts of dudes about this all the time. But I couldn't do what he did. And I'm glad I did what I did associated with, because what it brought to your heart and how you serve people and all that it's a real good satisfaction. So.
And the timeline of the relationship just changes. Like we always say, like every 10 years it changed, right? We raised 2 sons. And of course you want those children to have resilience, right? We didn't have your typical normal household where our boys got to have the same friends and the same house, and right. So there's a lot of moving and a lot of moving parts. So to my end, I just always tried to maintain a healthy atmosphere in the home, grounded, absolutely, because he was gone a lot. He traveled an abundant amount of time. So there's a lot of times I was there with just the boys, knowing how important a father is to raising sons. So that was an interesting focus for a while. And now where we are now, it's pretty awesome doing what we're doing together.
So tell us about where did this passion come, to start the Ford School to help teen boys? Please walk us through that a little bit.
Yeah. So this is post-COVID, and we were in Jacksonville Beach, had a house. Well, it was Neptune Beach near Jacksonville Beach. We had a house about a quarter mile from the ocean. Megan, we were building a yoga spot, shala, in the backyard for Megan to do her business, and she was doing retreats. And then, of course, travel just dried up like crazy.
The big COVID.
Yeah. I was just driving around skydiving and surfing. So it was pretty fun.
It's pretty sweet.
Like chasing her around the house. I mean, I had that life, dude. So, but she, I'm like, man, I'm too young not to work. A 33-year pension as lieutenant colonel is a great pension. I could pay for anything we want, but I'm too young not to work. So I wanted a job, not needed a job. And so I had a couple headhunters that were looking for me, but I just had them looking around Jacksonville. And as soon as I opened up, I'm like, hey, Megan goes to me, hey, my yoga stuff's not working right now with no travel. If you want to go somewhere and do something. So Talent War Group was looking around for me. Mike Sorelli's a good buddy of mine. He's like, Joe, dude, this may be right up your alley. I keep on sending non-medical guys to these guys, and they, they're not grasping you owning and running doctors and medical procedures and HIPAA laws and stuff like that. So
it was actually the day after I said to him, you know what, open up your aperture. It's not fair of me to kind of say we got to stay here for me when I'm not making any money and everything is dried up. So it was like the next day.
Yeah, it was really quick. And they got me on a plane. They flew me out to Lake Ozarks where their main facility is. But Embark Behavioral Health right now, like when I started, I think they had 21 facilities. Now they have 28. They opened up 7 to 8 facilities during COVID to include the Forge. It's just amazing. So when I got there, we're in Benton, Tennessee. It's on 55 acres. It's a residential treatment center for troubled teen boys. Adventure experiential, academics on, leading them through their academics, intense therapy, not only with the counselors and the therapists, but also in the milieu and a social experience to try to get them to adapt to their social skills. So talked about it, interviewed. We had a decent round of interviews, and they're like, hey, we want to offer you the job. And so we're about an hour. The school's about an hour north of Chattanooga where we live, which is, we have great mornings and evenings in the car on the way there and back. But it's
just two men talking mindfulness podcast.
That's it.
That's right. There you go.
Thanks for the plug.
Well done.
So, and then I went to his onboarding because knowing him well enough, every time we went to a new duty station, he would really dive into his work. And I'm like, if I want to see this guy, I'm going to have to make myself useful and figure out what I can do. And so I'm really into nutrition and health. And we talked about creating a nutritional health program at the Forge. So I was like, okay, I can be involved with that. I can help teach the staff and the boys mindfulness or a little bit of yoga. I can help with the marketing and the advertising and really laying the groundwork for the SEO for social media marketing, what have you. So I went to his onboarding for those 3 weeks. And on the second to last day, they actually offered me the job to be the enrollment and marketing director.
Nice.
Oh, yeah, wonderful.
While I was out there, we brought in like 3 people in the industry to be the admissions director, and all the staff there, my former boss and my peer that was in Lake Ozark, they're like, Joe, we like Meghan better than the people you're bringing in. I'm like, well, go tell them.
Yeah.
We'll see. But we always knew we always knew we could work well together. This is like really cool to us. We are so appreciative to this company. To give us this opportunity to help the boys to do, we love being good employees, and we always knew like you guys have known us a little bit. We're just like this. We've been like this for the last 20 years, so it's really awesome.
So
nice.
I love what you guys are doing, obviously, but I got to ask, like, why, and obviously we'll get into the differences between young boys, young girls, and some of the challenges that they face growing up. But why is the Forge School specifically for young boys and not all youths?
Yeah, so the majority of beds out there, access to residential treatment centers for teens, are for girls. Like 85% of girls, 80% of them are west of the Mississippi. The vast majority of mental health workers are female. So boys and testosterone is completely underserved. And they're 50% of the trouble, right?
The majority of the violence is created by boys or men.
Yeah. So it's a unique case. Like John, you and I know, Will, you probably know this too, but John, especially with all the young men that we've influenced, boys are trained, girls are educated at a general level. And that training is repetitive, and it's got to be tactile, and it can't be all sitting in a book, or else your legs are going to start shaking. And what's he got? ADHD? Give him some meds, and this type. It's not. No, they're bored. They're pissed. Their hormones are cruising through them, and all sorts of stuff that, we went through and we've seen other people go through. So
and then they start to feel like inadequate, or that they're not smart, and they're trying to find their sense of self and who they are as teenagers, right?
Yeah.
And so they don't feel like they fit in. And so especially like what we're seeing post-COVID, and we're really not post-COVID, but you know what I'm saying, is a lot of school refusal, a lot of acting out, a lot of acting in. I mean, it's the drugs, it's, addiction to technology, and they're just closing down and shutting out. And It's an epidemic. It's becoming so critical. And because, I mean, a lot of these boys just don't have words for what they're feeling.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Because they don't. And a lot of these boys, they're disconnected from their bodies.
Yeah.
They just don't know where they are in space. And so they come in pretty acute, but we do a really good job with them.
Yeah, well, tell us about that. How they, what are some of the, when the boys come to your school or to your training facility, what are some of their biggest challenges? What are the things that are very obvious that that you help them with?
So let me
just
set
as they, go for it.
Let me set a baseline here. So our company has a really cool thing. We have a continuum of care. We do not want to separate boys from their families. The best people to lead boys, educate boys, teach boys are their parents. And so online therapists, in-person therapists, maybe an IOP, an intensive outpatient therapy, like 4 days, maybe a partial hospitalization where they're sleeping in their bed at night, but going someplace 8 hours. And then in that continuum, you step up to us, a residential treatment center. And then there's also wilderness around there. If you really need to detox a kid off something, you just take them out into the woods. There's a lot of wilderness places. But just below a residential treatment center, whether it's long-term or short-term, the only other place you could go is a psych hospital. So really, like, our place looks like a school, and it's called the Ford School really to ease the shame and embarrassment of the boys and the parents. But there's some serious drugs in there. There's some serious therapy going on, because these aren't kids that go F you to mom after she goes, put your video game controller down, and they walk away and do what she said to do. These are kids that are going after mom, and maybe parents are locking up knives and stuff like that. So we're seeing a lot of defiance. We're seeing a ton of depression, screen addiction. It's, our company is seeing boys as young as 8 addicted to porn.
It's a thing.
Wow. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it's really hard. Yeah. And I want to add, we are a family systems approach. Yeah. So everything that we do is through the lens of the family system, the roles, the rules, relationships that are within that system. And so not only does the boy that comes to us we need a level of buy-in from him, we also need a level of buy-in from the family system, because we can't help a boy in our short term, which our short term stay is about 47 days, if the family's not going to do their own work. And so it's really a whole holistic program, hitting on the nutrition, hitting on the outdoor experiential, because boys need to move, hitting on the deep, sophisticated clinical therapy, and then co-regulating and learn to attune with each other so they can have these skills and go back home with them.
Yeah, our therapeutic model runs through phases. So we have assessment and safety. We try to get the kid out of there 7 to 10 days, and then we want to go to engagement and connection, and then transition them back into the family, sports, home, friends, school, all that type of stuff. So it's really, the front end of this is we really need buy-in from the parents. We need buy-in from the kids. A lot of these kids don't have proper boundaries and limits. And so, for all the parents out there, this is a foot stomp. If your kid has a cell phone before the age of 13, you're changing their brain chemistry.
Yeah.
You may not get them back.
Literally.
You literally may not get them back. And so it is the brave, brave, brave set of parents that don't allow their kid to have a phone until they're 14, 15. Like, that is, and I know there's people out there going, you got to be kidding me. Like, that's,
how are we going to do that?
Yeah. How are you going to do that? Yeah. And
it's hard.
It's very hard.
And raising kids is hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've got one boy and 2 little girls, and my 4-year-old girl is asking for a phone already. And I'm like, no, no way. And she's like, well, what about when I'm 6? I'm like, no. Maybe when you're a teenager. Like, no, you're not kidding.
I love how she jumps over 5 and goes to 6.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah. Oh well, her numbers are all over the place, man.
Oh, okay.
If you ask her how old she is,
numbers already, man.
Yeah, I asked her how old she was the other day. She said 4.5 3/4.
3/4 of the half. Brilliant.
Yeah.
They're getting so smart so fast.
Yeah,
I know.
So it's like everything, moderation. Absolutely. What we did with our boys, they were really into video games, and I wasn't. I was not a video game guy at all. And so they had to do 2 hours of Khan Academy, KHAN. I don't know if anybody.
Yeah.
It's an amazing program. So they had to do 2 hours of Khan Academy to play 1 hour of video games. They could play 1 hour on the weekdays and 2 hours on the weekend. That was it. And we had a pool in the backyard, and they could bring their friends over, and we had dogs, and they better be taking the dogs for a walk and doing poo patrol and doing all their chores and
Yes.
all that type of stuff. So it's making sure that 15 things are being checked off in their day, not just one thing of them sitting there looking at that stuff, because it's a Verizon and T-Mobile are the new crack dealers.
Yeah. And,
I mean,
so is social media.
Yeah,
Same
and
thing.
the industry we talked about a while ago. This industry, there's only two industries that call their people users, and that's the drug industry and that's the tech industry.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Well, I think what I'd like to talk a little bit more about is that detoxing. Like, what are some of the why you're detoxing them from certain, like whether social media and food. I know you mentioned on your website, you talk about eliminating dairy, sugar, and gluten. Why is this detox such a big core development of your program?
An inflammatory state. And if you think about it, and of course I'm generalizing, but these boys specifically, especially during COVID, they were playing video games, they're in their room, they're eating, McDonald's or whatever, just junk, right? They're becoming isolated, right? Drawing away from the whole family system. And then it's just like a perfect storm of inflammation. And it's a gut brain thing, right? And so if your body's constantly inflamed, your behavior is going to be off. The serotonin, right, is made in the gut, and that's going to be off. So when they come to us, they are in a state of crisis or just very acute. Suicidal ideation, anxiety, depression, school refusal, acting in, acting out, like you name it. And they're tech addicted. And so they don't like it. Hopefully the boys know they need the help, right? So when they show up, that's what they do. And right away, they start to notice the withdrawal symptoms. So we don't detox them. We say that, but we're not a facility that actually runs a detox. But they start to feel it. They feel sluggish initially. And then our nurse and our coaches and the clinicians will be like, well, listen, buddy, you've eaten clean for 3-4 days. Like, you're going to feel better in about 5 or 6, right? And then by end of the first week, maybe the 10 days, they start to be like, my brain fog is lifting. My eyes are clearer. I kind of want to be outside. I want to talk to people. Mm-hmm. So initially they push against it because it's so foreign to what they're used to. But then they adapt to it. And we've had kids actually leave with like a good sense of what nutrition is. Yeah. And we're making like a cookbook right now that we're going to give to all the families with all the recipes so they can do it at home, because that's really an important piece, right? Being part of the family system, the families have to learn how to eat this way as well. But dairy, a lot of kids are allergic or just intolerant to dairy and gluten, and the parents don't know it. And then sugar's a big thing, right? So we just source natural sugars like honey and maple syrup, agave, things like that.
For the listeners out there, one of the things I want to clear up is if a residential treatment center you're considering says they do everything, run from them. We don't take autistic kids. We don't take spectrum kids. Like, we're very high sensory. So if a kid is a low sensory kid, there's places that handle them. But the drug addiction, detox, that really comes from substance abuse. There's special places that do that. At the most we'll consider is marijuana and maybe one use of another drug besides marijuana.
Well, we're not a primary substance abuse place. We're just not.
Yeah.
It's just not our skill set.
Yeah.
And that's
detox is a big word, and I don't mean to kind of drift off or like I understand, and thank you for honoring that and being sensitive to that. But could you just a little bit more about? I imagine that what is it like after those first 5-6 days when they imagine they're starting to adjust to a new environment, but without their technology? I mean, do they? I imagine there must be like an addict behavior. Like, as far as do you notice any of that? Because I just, one thing I asked, because social media, it's not only addictive as far as the interface. Again, they call us users, right? Because it's like crack, to our brain for that dopamine drip. But it also begins to change, or tries to change, fundamentally who you are. So any kind of comments about like tech and social media and what you're seeing with the boys?
I think we see it both ways. I think we see some kids that are like, they've been so super depressed, they start to see a little bit of light. And then we have other boys, and we're not clinicians, right? So our clinicians are doing the deep clinical therapy, and the coaches in the back, we're administrators. But some of the kids get it, and then other kids just push against it.
Yeah, so we've served 55 boys since we've opened at the Forge last year, and we've just been open just shy of a year now. And we plan on serving probably about 96 boys next year. Our average length of stay is 45 to 90 days. I would say 2/3 of them definitely get it and go, man, we have a bamboo forest on the property. We're right on the Hiawassee River. The Smoky Mountains are right out our back door with tens of thousands of acres and waterfalls and trails and stuff like that. So like there's no, if we even see them, like when we give them a tablet for school, and if they're regulated enough, they can go to school. And if they just try to get on Instagram or correct, okay, buddy, here's pen and paper. No problem. You know, so our residency staff in the back, we have a milieu experience at social, and then their rooms are back there, and there's 3 to 4 boys per room, and they're going through their day and they're learning life skills about cleaning up and cleaning the room and doing their clothes and moving in and out of chow and moving from schools and therapy and group sessions and functional fitness and all that type of stuff. The intimate relationships are really being formed by the coaches and the team leaders. And it's just amazing to hear their feedback about the boys, you know, what they've seen and breakthroughs. And so when you were talking, Will, I started smiling big because it's about 2/3 that finally make repair. So it's connection, break, repair, right? They've had connection, they're breaking it because of something. And so everybody should have hope out there. Our staff has hope. We have hope. All of us here should have hope. Parents should have hope. Kids should have hope, because that repair is magical. And really that repair is like awareness of, man, this social media or this phone is really driving me down, or I'm being bullied 24/7 because I'm allowed to have this in my room and all that. So it's amazing to see. John, this spoke to me. We understand OODA loop, right? Observe, orientate, decide, and act. When they talk to me about the CASA model and about CASA model's commitment, acceptance, security, attunement, and that's our overall general modality that the clinicians use, but also this connection, break, repair, I'm like, oh man, this makes perfect sense. So when I was doing all my training, I was like, man, you guys are onto something here.
Let me just inject a second, and we are an empathetic program. Yeah. It's all viewed through the lens of empathy. So it's not don't do the behavior. Clinicians and the coaches try to get under it to figure out why the behavior, right? And how to address it that way. And so repair is a very huge part of that. So they make the connection with the coach or the clinician, right? There's a break because the student doesn't do what he's supposed to do, or maybe the clinician makes a mistake, right? And then there's an opportunity for repair. And so part of the Rite of Passage and part of the mentoring of boys, which is so important, is to model what right looks like. So the coaches are taught to, as well as the clinicians know this naturally, is you own up to your role in that break. And then the boys start seeing you apologize. Man, you know, I see that, you know, as an example, I saw you were getting a little agitated and I asked you to do this. And I understand that you kind of blew up, and I should have recognized that. It's my bad. So they model how to repair. And then the boys are like, what's going on here, right? Because typically in a mom and dad scenario, or at least how typically you're like, you shouldn't have done that. Why did you do that to your kids? Like, why did you do that? And it's not that. It's like, man, you know, I saw you were struggling and I kind of put this expectation on you, and I'm sorry for that. And then the boys start to get it. And so they start to teach the family as part of that family system. So it can be very magical.
So the family piece, you know, you mentioned that before. You mentioned even developing a cookbook to take home for the families. You know, for the families, for the parents who are watching and listening, who maybe they won't have an opportunity to bring their boy to an organization or institution like the Forge School. How can they teach their boys these coping skills, and rather, for those who leave the Forge school and then they go back into the regular world, right? I mean, it sounds like an amazing organization and institution, but they're there for, what did you say, Joe, 45 to 60 days? I think.
Yeah, 45 to 90 days.
That's the
45
average.
to 90 days. Yeah, 45 to 90 days. After that, they go home and now they're inundated with technology again. They're inundated with McDonald's food and everything. So for those of us who are parents who may not be able to bring our children to an institution like the Ford School, or for those who have gone through the Ford School and afterwards, how do you maintain these coping skills and how do you teach these coping skills?
Yeah, so I'll answer the second part first. We're a family system, so the family has to change and stop giving the kids technology as much. They got to stop bringing a kid to McDonald's. They got to start going and getting salads and proteins and feeding that. And mom and dad got to stop yelling at each other and treating each other nice and learn about connection, break, repair, and model that in front of the kids as they're going along. So the program has to work of the family system.
And I want to give you a visual. It's boundaries. So this CASA model, commit, acceptance, security, and attunement, it's boundaries and limits. And so those kids are going to push against that because kids like structure, right? They're not going to want to listen to mom and dad. But to hold those boundaries and the limits are exceedingly important. But it's just being consistent, I think, is the most important thing, and owning up. Because we hear it all the time, mom and dad don't understand me, they won't listen, and so on and so forth. And so it's a great opportunity for the parents to step back into their power, in a positive way, is that vertical relationship, because it is a vertical relationship. Because a lot of parents just want to have a buddy-buddy relationship with their kids, and that's not working in this day and age. Yeah. It's just not.
Yeah, if you give your kids wings before you give them roots, I guarantee you they're going to come back and root inside your house.
I like that. We're going to have to make sure that's captured for Lindsay, who's capturing the notes in the back. Make sure you capture, if you give your kids wings before you give them roots, they're going to come back and root. That's amazing. So,
gosh, and here's the thing. I mean, we raised 2 kids, and it wasn't easy during those high school years. It was not. And one thing I always, me personally, always would say to myself is, all right, roots and wings. And you want to be that little bird on their shoulder that doesn't feel judged all the time. So they don't feel judged all the time, that they're going to want to come to you when they're having a hard time. Because if you make it impossible for your children to talk to you honestly, like if you can just sit there and hold space for your kids while they have big feelings, while they're crying, while they're telling you things that you don't want to hear as a parent, but you can just hold that space, then they start to feel safe and secure in their relationship with you. And then maybe it's not going to happen until they're done with college, but they'll come back around and be like, hey, thank you. I mean, it happened for us with our kids.
I would say 9 out of the 10 parents of kids that we have, the boundaries and limits are way too loose. And then the other kid has this militant dad that is just jacking everything up.
But they all
too strict.
That's what we were both bad cop, bad cop. We agreed with each other. We never said yes to the boys. It was always maybe. So, but
and it wasn't always that hardcore. I mean, he says bad cop, but still a mom, right?
Yeah.
So with that, you may have heard about in punitive actions towards your kids, or in disciplining them, or trying to get them to do something. We never want to inflict pain, shame, or blame, right? And I know some of these institutions that are out there they pride themselves on tough love. What are your guys' thoughts on tough love, and is that an effective parenting technique? Thoughts on that?
So that's a great question. When we hired my clinical director, Josh Noreen, he's amazing. He was getting calls from referral partners, educational consultants, psychiatrists, psychologists. They're like, hey, what's it like working with the military dude or the militant guy? They didn't say military, they said militant. And then he's like, Joe, the long-haired surfer, skydiver, what are you talking about? And I'm like, Josh, what are they talking about? And he goes, well, there's these boot camp experiential places out there.
Right.
Well, I Googled some of these things. And these are posers traumatized kids. I would love to debate one of these yahoos sometime. They're putting on fake rank. They're yelling at kids or making them lift duffel bags above their head. I have no idea how these adults even sleep at night doing that. You have got to do an empathetic model associated with a kid who's sort of lost.
Yeah.
You can't. Now, of course, there's boundaries and limits. Like our coaches say, hey, I'm not okay with that. And the kids will get tired of hearing, I'm not okay with that. And when they get the praise for stuff that you are okay with, it's
positive reinforcement.
Yeah. And then there's distracting and curiosity. It's like, man, why are you doing that? What's going on here? Like, we're trying to do this over here and you're distracting. Is there something we could do for you? It's just sort of giving them their time that they're not used to having away from, especially screen addiction, because that's mostly what our boys have and stuff like that. But it's a similar approach with the females in the facilities in our company as well. So
it's about creating a safe space for the kids to express how they feel.
Well, yeah, and that empathy is going to help them to. You're kind of modeling in an empathetic model how to speak to their emotions or become more aware of their emotions, but also empathy. And you talk about this, within the literature of the Ford School, is developing trust, and and that's really where, I mean, just my relationship to John, like I have a complete trust in John, and that foundation of trust really has given us an opportunity to grow and just really access the potential of what we're doing, because we have this basic foundation of trust. And I know, like, when you're empathetic and you're speaking to somebody and trying to receive somebody in an empathetic way, and then talking to them empathetic way, that trust is going to form. And there's a lot of opportunity that comes forward because of trust. And
that self-awareness, you start to build that, because it's not going to be a straight line, right? And the more you're self-aware and you can tune in and be mindful, right, of the things that you're saying, the things that you're doing, the judgments, and you start to be like, okay, I was a little judgy there. How can I repair this, right? Or I'm really attached to the outcome here and it's not working. So maybe I need to just kind of not be attached and just kind of let it go for a couple of days. You know what I mean? It's always about pivoting and changing and trying to find what works right. And I just think, as a parent, if you could just stop and take a breath, right? How long was that meditation? A minute, right?
Yeah.
It totally gets you grounded into the right headspace. So go to the other room if you're a parent, take yourself a breath, come back, be vulnerable, model what that vulnerability looks like. Dude, I messed up. I'm sorry. You still might get the FU, right? You still might get that. But again, down the road, they're going to remember it.
Yeah. And so, Will, I love what you were saying about you and John. And you got that trust because of time and evidence. And what social media is doing to us is instant gratification. And we all know that resiliency is probably the fourth best word after love, kindness, care, whatever you want to put in front of it. I mean, people have got to have resiliency. And, I think you guys are getting ready to have a podcast on grit, right? Did I hear about that?
Yep.
So, you got to have grit, whatever word you want to use out there. But time and evidence is how you get there. And these devices that we're carrying around, forget kids being addicted to these things. 45-year-old people in your town, Will, are addicted to these things and walking into the street and getting hit by cars and stuff. And because they're chasing those likes and all that type of stuff. So time and evidence, people, is the long game. The road is long, the gates is narrow, whatever mantra you need to adopt to sort of get you out, and, whatever thing you want to do to sort of give you resilience, you have got to go that. You've got to teach your kids that, or else we're in a fight against shame, John, and we're not winning. We're not winning.
Yeah. Well, elaborate on that a little bit. What do you mean, the fight against shame? Please.
So these kids are very shameful, and also the parents have a lot of shame and embarrassment because their kids aren't getting into Harvard, or Yale, or Georgia, or UNC, or wherever, University of Colorado. They're not doing whatever. And so people are hanging on so tight. The beautiful thing about this, what you guys are doing, and what many other I think the veteran community can lead the way on this. The stigma of mental health and behavioral health is going away. It's okay to go, hey, I need help. I raise my hand. You have got to talk to people. It is science. Now, it's an opaque path and there's guardrails. It's not like I broke my knee, I go get my knee MRI'd, I go get my knee scoped, I rehab my knee's fixed on this date. It's an opaque path compared to that, but there is qualified science and care behind it. And it's just awesome that, the stigma is going away. You guys have mentioned toxic masculinity on your podcast before.
Yeah.
Masculinity is awesome. Anything toxic is, so if you have a guy who's being toxic, he's being a jackass, right? So masculinity is an awesome thing for this world. It protects people. It builds stuff. it does all sorts of stuff. And so
yeah, and we talked about that. We talked
Right,
about that in the Reinventing Masculinity episode, in that, masculinity in and of itself is not toxic, but when you force your views of masculinity, if you force your views of femininity, if you force your views of politics, whatever you do, if you're forcing your views on someone else, that's when it becomes toxic. So, and I've actually got a related question, because we talked about boys and their feelings, expressing those feelings in the empathetic model. We have a question here in the chat. It says, please help to give a script for encouraging empathetic young men when they show their emotions, use words, etc., and they're called sissy or girly man and other slurs. Help me with how to teach filters for how and when to show empathy to peers so it's effective instead of a framework for bullying. Could you guys maybe throw something out there for that?
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
Bullying.
So first of all, the reason why our company's in the 13 to 17-year-old space is because you could be in charge of kids. Once somebody says they're 18, they could check themselves out of these places, rehab. That's why people don't get healthy into their 30s and they lose their 20s, because they didn't get help for being unwell as a kid. So wherever the kid is at, they're supposed to be protected. Right. And so, if they're at school and they're being bullied, man, I'm pulling my kid out of that school. Right. Like, or I'm definitely showing up to the school game. Hey, what's going on? What's going on here? This isn't good. For the family, though, what the guy has to do is, like, there's a joke, our guy's age, or I'm a little older than you guys, but, I cried when Old Yeller died. Right. It's okay to cry when Old Yeller dies. And you got to let the kids know, man, dude, I felt that way before. You have got to mirror to them. You got to get on their level, and you got to mirror to them. Man, dude, I know this is tough. Let me tell you about when I was picked on, when I was at school, not suck it. As soon as you go, you start telling a kid what to do. Man, that's just.
But to address Lori's question, like, regarding if she's trying to give a script to her son, she can simply teach him to say, that's not okay. That's hurtful. And walk away. That was, again, that's not okay. That's hurtful. Walk away. They'll eventually get it. Keep it really short and simple. And it's hard, right? And so she's going to have to empower her son to be able to do that, if I'm understanding the question. But keeping the script as simple as possible. And of course, telling, the school administrators, and having that open dialogue with your child. One of our sons was bullied in school. It took a while for him to come clean about it. And we had a pretty open, really good relationship. So again, going back to creating that safe space. And it would apply to this, having that son feel safe in his own body, so he had self-agency enough to be like, that's not okay. I'm not okay with that. That's hurtful. Yeah. So I think if you could just keep it simple, that's best. And then, of course, allow him to come home, cry on your shoulder, hold that space. So I hope I answered that question.
Whatever the kid is into, you got to promote it. Like, one of the things that turned me, like, I played team sports when I was a kid, and I loved it. When I brought my kids to it and I saw the way the parents were acting, I'm like, oh, heck no. Hey. So luckily we were stationed in Hawaii a couple times, and they had some of the best dojos in the world, and they did martial arts. The times we were in Hawaii and Albuquerque and Valdosta, Georgia, and all that different. So they got some of that, but we wouldn't have put them in there if they weren't into it. Like, if we said, hey, dude, do you want to do it? It wasn't like, hey, man, you got to do this to toughen up or whatever. So whatever the kid was into, you got to help them and try to find a tribe and people that are kind and caring and going to look out for each other, So,
gosh, and it's hard.
It's so hard.
Everywhere.
It's tough.
And it's bullying. It's terrible.
Yeah,
it's horrible.
Yeah,
but it's happening. You can't avoid it.
Yeah.
In the school, they teach the coping skills. They model repair, because even bullying happens in the school. But they use it as the clinicians use it as a therapeutic opportunity to create change.
Yeah.
Wow.
In that system. So they'll say, they'll get the two boys together, they'll discuss it, they'll facilitate a repair. And so repair.
Yeah, you got to give your kid time. You got to communicate with your kid. And a lot of times boys, so go for a walk. Don't put a boy in a room and sit there and try to talk to them. Look in my eyes. They don't want to look in your eyes. Go for a walk. Go hit up. If you have a punching bag in the house, take turns on the punching bag. They'll start talking. It's about the event first, and then they'll start communicating with you.
And I want to do an illustration real quick. We're just going over this. So look at me like this. Like, so if you're talking like this, right? Or You come alongside them, you hang back, and you're like, all right, so what happened there? Like, what was that about? Why'd you choose to do that? Like, look at the difference in the body posture. You did this, or hey, let me come alongside you and hang out with you and see if we can find a solution together.
Yeah. Well, let me just describe that for our listening audience. So, like at the beginning, you guys were facing one another, or closed body. Yeah, I mean, imposing, I guess. And then versus like open body side to side, shoulder to shoulder, instead of like squaring up. And that just from my experience working with the body, but also being in communication a lot with people, it's like you want to stay open. You want to create a space that things are open, and instead of something like closed off and one person in that relationship trying to listen, not just listen to the other person, but really or being kind of told that they must listen to that person. I usually shut down. Like I had a lot of trouble when I was a kid because I was always being told what to do without any explanation, without, it was always kind of an authoritarian kind of thing instead of just asking me, in some ways, which was a lot of resistance that I had because of the authoritarian nature of some of the things that I was, required to do as a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, listen, a lot of these skills we're learning. I mean, we think we're great parents, but at the same time, we can recognize now where we might have failed our sons, right? In the rearing of your children. Because when you know better, you do better. Right? Who said that? Maya Angelou or Oprah? One of them?
One of them.
Right?
One of those amazing ladies said something.
Joe likes to say, I have no original
thoughts.
They're all begged, borrowed, and stole from somebody else.
That smart person said it. I'm gonna listen to that and write it down.
Yeah, why not? Right? No need to reinvent the wheel. So coming to the end of the hour here pretty quickly. What have we not talked about that you want to make sure our audience hears or sees?
Teaching boys healthy code. Why don't you talk about Rite of Passage?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
not to put them on the spot, or anything.
No, I mean, like, it was really cool with my boys, their transition to manhood, and them going skydiving with me, teaching them both to skydive when they were 18, surf trips, camping trips, that type of stuff. Just you got to go out and do those types of things. You got to get out. There's what is it? There's Basic Dude Stuff. You guys ever see that Instagram page, Basic Dude Stuff? There's a special forces guy out of Fort Bragg, and he has just like basic dude stuff: how to tie knots, how to blow off the driveway, how to bring your wife a bottle of wine or a glass of wine. He's just like calling out basic. It's hilarious. It's like awesome, and so it's just parents have got to get off the phone. You got to participate in your kid's life. So, I mean, everybody wants a baby. Very few people want to have a human that they want to raise, right? Like that's sort of the way they're acting. So you got to engage in your kid's life, and you got to try to get them to 26.
And get them to talk about their feelings by creating a safe space. Even when.
Why is that so important? Why is this talking about their feelings so important, Meghan?
Because if they're feeling judgment, like you just touched on this a little bit, if they're constantly feeling judgment, they're going to feel like, oh, I'm going to get in trouble. This feels uncomfortable with me. I'm not going to, I'm going to lose my privilege or whatever. It doesn't feel safe. Or my parents are going to judge me. Like they're going to think less of me. So creating that open dialogue and just being really open-hearted. Like we were talking about, like thick skin, open heart. Yeah. Like when your kids come to you about something, just creating this necessary safe space where they feel that they can come to you with their problems. And it takes time and evidence. Yeah. Just by showing up. It's balance. So when I used to give young airmen a briefing called 4 Corners of Clarity. And it's working on your affect. It's working on your performance. It's working on your health. It's working on your cognitive, your study. And so, of course, there's many, many different things underneath your attitude, underneath your health, underneath your performance, underneath your cognitive that you could do, right? You can listen to Men Talking Mindfulness podcasts. You can read their book when they come out. That's on the cognitive side. If you don't have all 4 corners, then your center is all jacked up. And the center is the way, the center is moderation, the center is care, the center is proper. And so it's just like that OODA loop we talked about. You have got to work on all these things. And so, unfortunately, in general, men work on the accountability. They don't work on the compassion side of themselves.
where women work on the compassion side of themselves and they don't work on, the accountability side. Because there's certain times in life you got to be curt, right? You just can't walk through life going like this. So honestly, like a perfect person would be like John and Brene Brown if they got together, right? Like Baby Seal, and you want this therapist, and you take the both from these people, and that's what you want to have in life. So for any guy to say, man, I want to talk about that, suck it up, all that, that's you kids get off my yard, and that's some of the dumbest stuff ever. And that's not being a dude. That's,
Right.
You got to protect, you got to care, you got to serve, and you're not going to be able to do that if you're acting like a horse's asshole.
Right. And that just contributes to the loneliness that's out there, of like, do it alone. And I think that's a lot of the problems I feel with kids these days, is they just feel alone and they don't feel connected to something that's real. So they get lost in, somebody else's idea of who they should be, what they should do. And it's so, and that messaging is everywhere, from TV, from social media. So they can completely get wrapped up in that. And really lose themselves. And if it's not, thankfully for a facility like yours, that can remind them of their humanity. And part of that, our basic biological needs is to have a connection to something beyond ourselves. And that's how we thrive as human beings, regardless of, where we are in our life, really coming together.
Exactly.
These old guys out there that are yelling at Fox News or crying when CNN's on, they're going through menopause. And that's something that's not talked about.
That's a whole nother subject.
That's a whole nother subject. But the hormone drop in men is just like hormone drop in women. And so menopause, and so it goes back to what the stats we talked about with the boys. Like, all the beds the majority of beds are for girls. Boys are underserved. Men are underserved when it comes to hormone therapy and things of that nature. And they're all jacked up, and that's why they're acting like assholes. And so, I'm not an endocrinologist, of course, right? So, but it's I did stay at the Holiday Inn.
The Holiday Inn Express, right?
Yeah, but
Nice job.
no, I mean, it's just, there's all sorts of, like, guys have got to go out and get help. They got to go out and get help, like what you need, like, and so health is the new wealth. It's amazing people aren't chasing mindfulness, nature, exercise, eating right.
And we've done a great amount of yoga together. Like, we're very passionate about veterans transition out and maintaining like relationships, or trying to, and what Joe was just talking about, hormone replacement. We think that's key to feeling well as you age. It's a deep dive into another podcast maybe, but we're both on LinkedIn, and we love talking to people, and we love helping people. So I'm very pro man. I'm very, very, I'm a man fan.
Meghan and Joe Barnard right here. You've heard them. And like they said, they are on LinkedIn. That's actually, funny enough, I never crossed paths with Joe until LinkedIn. And happy that I did. And obviously Meghan as well. So thanks so much for being here, guys. Will, I know we want to wrap it up with a closing practice.
Yeah. First, just thanks to you guys for being and sharing the wisdom on this. And thank you for putting some great work in the world, as well as, allowing boys to be boys, but also guiding boys to be great young men and responsible adults. I really appreciate that, because we need more of that in the world.
Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it.
No, you're very welcome. And, as for our grounding practice, I mean, this is, it could be a part of anybody and any time in your life. Is just taking some time to drop into your breath, which allows us to get into our body, which allows us to get into the here and now. But also, as you continue to be mindful in any practice, whether it's breathing or meditation or just even going for a walk, right? We can be aware that, hey, here and now is here and now, right? This is my mind. These are my feelings. These are the world around me, but I'm something deeper on the inside. So let's just find that for a few minutes as we just take on a very simple breathing practice. So again, find that seat, or stop what you're doing, or just focus up. And you can do this even when you're driving. So close the eyes if that's safe for you right now. Ground those feet on the floor, ground your hands on the table or on the thigh, but make contact with something. Or if you want to make a deeper connection to your body by bringing one hand onto your belly and one hand across your chest, if you like. And let's just start with a nice, simple exhale out. You can exhale out the mouth. A great way to release stress. Nice little if you like. Let's take now big inhale. Try to fill into your belly and then allow that balloon-like breath to fill all the way to the top of the chest. And exhale the breath out the mouth again. Okay, let's do a couple more just like this. Inhale big. More breath in. Exhale out. Couple more in breath. Out breath. 2 more of those. Let it go. Again, let's inhale through the nose. Let's just take a moment, pause at the top, and get very clear. We're going to exhale through the nose, but very intentionally, very smooth as you exhale out for a long count. Let it go, go, go. Let's do a couple more of those. Inhale for 5 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Exhale, 5, 4. Really control the exhale. 2, 1. Controlled inhale, smooth. Exhale, smooth. And just think of just taking control of your breath as taking control of your life, right? Good. 2 more of those. Inhale for 5. Exhaling 5. Good. 1 more. In 5. And out 5. Good. Just take a moment here. Thank yourself for being present for this show today. Thank yourself for just taking this moment to find your breath. When you're ready, you can bring some movement back in, open the eyes, and thank you, Joe, Meghan, Jon. Thank you for everyone being here today and being part of the show. And please get out there. Maybe take a screenshot. A little shameless promotion. Plug it on your social media. I know we just talked about social media, how destructive it is, but I feel like the show is actually bringing some good to the world. So I'm not afraid of sharing that, right? And share it with your community and your family, and your friends, and let us know we can serve you a little bit better. And thank you, Joe and Meghan, again for serving our community today and bringing this knowledge to them.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you guys so much for being here. Really appreciate it. And until next time, take care. Peace.
Peace. Thanks.
Thanks for joining Will and Jon on Men Talking Mindfulness. If you enjoyed the show, please like and share it with your friends and family, and please, we would appreciate a review too. Until next time, this has been Men Talking Mindfulness. Thanks for showing up.